Looks to come inside and fire one a goal and find the back of the net for Perth.
And the Azzurri have come back from 2 goals down to tie it up.
Cue the celebrations for the Azzurri.
Yeah, welcome. Episode 11 of the Perth SC Podcast. Coming to you from a rainy old Perth San Siro, aka Dorrien Gardens, right in the heart of this beautiful city. Blaine Treadgold with you to take you through the latest out of the Perth Soccer Club. Don't forget, as always, a little bit of a reminder to tell all your friends about the Perth SC Podcast. You can catch it through Spotify, Apple or YouTube, or simply search in to Google the Perth SC Podcast. You should get the results that you're after. And, of course, we can keep spreading the word of the mighty Azzurri Football Club. A couple of great guests coming up. We're going to check in with Ben Rowe from the Perth SC Blind Football team a little bit later on. And also, Football West commentator, part of the Perth Football Podcast, Tommy Doleman. He's going to jump on board for a little bit of a chat about what is happening across not only the... Well, we'll get his thoughts on what's happening at the Azzurri currently, but maybe a little bit of a broader chat about what's happening across football in Western Australia in 2024. First of all, let's check in with the results over the weekend. No NPL men's due to the Australia Cup break, so a good chance for maybe a little bit of a reset from the boys. Looking forward to seeing how they come back nice and refreshed for the match this weekend against rivals Bayswater City. For the NPL women, unfortunately, it was a 1-0 loss at the hands of Balcatta Etna. This one will sting a bit, I feel, despite a big effort and plenty of possession. The girls just couldn't find the back of the net and couldn't get that go-ahead goal across the weekend. But shout-outs to Daisy McAllister and Charlie Wainwright. I thought they were brilliant in the middle of the park alongside Town McKenna, who's been a great addition this season. Also, great to see Stacey Cavill back between the sticks following the departure of Lily Bailey, who I understand has headed off to the US college system. So we certainly wish Lily all the best in her endeavours over there. Earlier in the day, our 21s women, they went down also 1-0 to Balcatta, succumbing to a penalty just before half time. So not a great old Sunday, but plenty of chances to bounce back this weekend. We'll have a look at the fixtures to come towards the back end of the show. Right, quick intro. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back on the other side with our first special guest. For most of us, football is a difficult enough game, but try to imagine to play it with an impaired or no vision at all. Well, that's just how it is for the Perth SC Blind Football team. I wanted to find out a little bit more, and it's a delight to welcome player Ben Rowe, who's represents Perth SC so proudly and many other sports, and has done it for a long time now. Ben, thanks for jumping on the pod, mate.
Thanks for having me.
No worries at all. How's all the football coming along?
Yeah, very good. We're coming to the end of the season, but we've had a really good run and a good consistent group that's been getting together every week. So, yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah,
fun.
Absolutely. Mate, tell us a little bit about the competition, and obviously you guys are well supported by the Australian Blind Sports as well.
Yeah, so I guess my involvement is through Blind Sports WA. So basically my role there as the executive officer is to try and build more participation across the community in different sports, and blind football is one of the ones that we help to manage. So partnering with the Perth Soccer Club to get blind football up and running, and part of a club is a big part of what we do. So having Perth on board for the last couple of years has been excellent, and our team and participants love being part of a club. That's the whole inclusion piece, you know.
Ben, I wonder if you could tell us just a little bit of the background on your particular condition.
So I was born with a condition called retinitis pigmentosa. So that's a degenerative eye condition of the retina. So the retina is like a little disc between your eyeball and your optic nerve. And genetically, I guess the cell deteriorates over time. So you've got rods and cone cells. Rods are the ones that are your peripheral vision, and they detect light. So, your night vision, your tunnel vision, sort of that sort of thing. So seeing out of the corners of your eyes. So over time, I've lost pretty much all that vision. And then your cones is your acuity, what you see clearly, your colour, that sort of thing. And that's the central bit. And I've, I guess, lost all of that as well now. So like over time, I'm, 47 years old. I was diagnosed when I was 4, and it's just been a slow degradation of that tissue at the back of the eye.
Mate, it's phenomenal, and I can't imagine how hard that would have been, especially in your formative years as well.
Yeah, it is an adjustment because I've gone from your primary school playing footy, cricket, all your sports, and then as you get older, those things become more difficult, and then you're searching for things that you can, do with yourself without having to worry about your vision so much, so music and other things. But then I found sport. So sport was my thing with goalball, representing Australia for 10 or so years, and now blind soccer, tennis. I just won the tennis open over in Melbourne, which is good for B1s, which is the category of the lowest vision sight classification. So sport's been my thing. I play blind AFL too, which people will go, what's that game? But here blind soccer also, I love it, and what it does for just getting people together and keeping healthy, fit, and having some fun. So it's about community. Yeah,
absolutely, mate. You are a pretty outgoing sort of a bloke, and I know that you're big into your music as well. Do you find that sport, be it football or anything else, has given you a bit of a sense of purpose and something, a little bit more outside of that?
Yeah, look, sport does amazing things for someone with a vision impairment, and anyone really, but like the leadership sort of qualities and that being, self-esteem, all that sort of stuff, being able to speak and advocate on behalf of yourself is a big thing about sport, and being amongst your peers, so bringing people with you, things like that. But in terms of physical and sort of moving attributes, so like the balance, the dexterity, and all those sorts of things that you lose when you lose your vision, spatial awareness, orientation to sound, and where things are. Like close your eyes, people get lost. So it's a big thing about learning those skills. So sport plays a big role in sort of honing all that up, and I really stress to anyone out there who has a vision impairment to get into some form of sport just to build that confidence.
Yeah, and that's something I wanted to talk about, is that, you must see even yourself with new people that might come into the programs, I guess just that development and confidence build. Yeah,
so I got a good friend now who's recently lost his sight, and we do our own little podcast. It's called the Hawkey and Rowe Show. So
check it out
for that. It hasn't been launched yet, but we talk about the issues of losing your sight at a kind of later point in life. So you've lived life with some sight or all your sight, and suddenly it's gone. So for him, it's been a major adjustment. And look, I'm at the kind of tail end of losing my sight, but it's still hard, when you always relied on that little bit of sight. But for him, it's been a big adjustment. And I can imagine for many people out there who have just suddenly been, going through that adjustment, it's massive. So, getting people together who have lived it or are currently living it, and being amongst people that, know what the difficulty is, that sometimes you can just shelve all that and just have some fun and not worry about the vision impairment,
Mate, just the way that you speak about it is very, very, I guess, good in the way that you look at things positive. But has it always been like that?
For me, it has. But look, no lie, it is a challenge. But it's more about what you focus on in terms of what you can do and what you want to change, what you want to bring. So I've always I've done. I guess I've worked in counselling and psychology and all that sort of support sort of work, and I've always been a positive person in that respect, because life is what you build. You build a life, and sometimes if you sit around waiting for someone to rescue you, it's not going to happen. You'll be disappointed. So I've always been of the cards that if there's something that you want to do, achieve, or find, you search, you seek, and you build. And So I know that it's a positive part of doing it, but it's a creative thing. Like I have a creative mind, so you want to create the life that you want to live, and and that extends to everybody.
I want to talk about your creativity because, as I said, in a past life, you're a bit of a budding muso.
Yeah, it's also a current life. So
yeah,
look, as I said before, like you're going to lose your sight, so you kind of dabble in things. So I learnt guitar as a young kid early. Been playing since I can't remember, but turned into a bit of a guitar collector as well. So I've got more than fingers. And I love playing guitar, and with that you sing, so you build confidence singing and writing your own songs and things like that. So I did perform a lot early under the name Mr. Bo Dangles, and then I changed to Benny Rowe. So I've got songs out there on Spotify and all your platforms. I released an album called Talking to Empty Chairs late last year, and that's a bit of a play on words for blind people as well, where often we're having a chat to someone and we don't realise that they've gotten up and gone to the toilet or gone to do something, and we're sitting there chatting away, like saying our most deepest thoughts and all this stuff, and it's just an empty chair. So it's a bit of a laugh, and it's something that most blind vision impaired people have a giggle about all the time because there's a regular occurrence. But
you mentioned your guitar collection, mate. What's your favourite?
Well, I just acquired my first Fender Strat, so
Wow.
I've never had a Fender Strat before. I was been like a Gibson style guitar, Les Paul before,
Yep.
and I bought myself a Telly, like a Squier Telly as well. So I've got those, and acoustics. I got the the Maton acoustic and a Cole Clark. I keep digging. I got my first guitar that I ever had, which was a Yamaha Classical, so that's still there, rocking on. So I got bass guitars. I got it all.
I once read something. I can't even think if it was if I read it or I saw it in a video or something like that. But it was all about music, and it was all about how music is the ultimate skill to learn in using the majority of your brain.
Yeah.
And I found that amazing. And even now with your vision impairment, I mean, that muscle memory, that's all still there and everything.
Yeah, like I feel like my playing now is so much more deliberate in what I'm doing, because I've really I don't know if it's like a mathematical thing like or whatever it is, or a methodical thing that I've picked up, but things are starting to slot into place, which maybe that's a mental thing too. But yeah, I agree. Like tapping into that creative part of your brain is such an integral bit of life. I reckon everyone should be doing it in some form or another.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you find that? I mean, just back on the music, and I guess using a lot of your other senses, such as hearing. Did you find that they've kind of enhanced, or is that a bit of a myth?
It's more of a myth. So the myth. Like there's truth to it, but the myth is that, let's just say we're a bandwidth of information and you block one of the kind of channels, then
Sure.
you've got more coming in. So if you've got a freeway of, I don't know, so many lanes, you block a lane, and the traffic kind of concentrates. So now you're only getting this information, but you're honing in on that information. So that's the difference. It's not like you can hear more or that, but you pay attention more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mate, back on the football, I mean, how did you get involved down here? And can you tell us a little bit about the blind football program?
Yeah, so early on, blind football was it kicked off quite some time before I got in, but it disappeared. Like there wasn't the participation. And when I took over at Blind Sports WA, it was one of our projects to try and get moving, and met with Jason and co, and we worked out how we can sort of pull this together. And we got some grass time, and our friend Ken volunteered to start coaching with us, which was a great sort of Kickstarter, and he volunteered to do that early. And so we run that on a Sunday mornings, and at the first it was a handful of people, and it started to move. There was a few sessions that we did over at Mount Lawley with Mick Owens from Football. Football Foundation?
Football Futures.
Football Futures. Yeah. Yep. So he sort of helped sort of get the ball rolling a little bit, just work it out, because I'm not from a soccer background.
Sure.
I've never really played as a sighted person, but yeah, since moving into the vision impaired space, it started to be a game that I could enjoy. So it was a learning curve, and it's been going now for 3 years with the support of Perth, and over that time we've been gradually building up our game challenges. So we spent most of our time with training, so learning the game, learning the tracking of the ball, learning to move the ball underfoot, and learning the whole spacing structure thing, because we have a tendency as blind people to, you listen for the ball and all you want to do is go towards the ball. So you get like the little league kids all running towards the ball at once, and you got this pack and it gets crazy. So over the 3 years, we've really developed into a more structured way of playing football, which is, I guess, more fun to watch, as a spectator, but more fun to play. Yeah.
So Ben, it's I want you to just give me the 101. It's 5-a-side, isn't it? And is there what do we call it? The bell in the ball? Is there a bell or?
So there's two forms of the game, because there's 3 classifications of the vision impairment. So B1's is let's just say totally blind, and you wear an eye shade, so you're blacked out, everyone's even. And a B2 and a B3 has some partial vision. So they play the standard 5-a-side form of the game. And the only difference for them is that the ball is of a good contrast colour that they can see, and there's, you want so many B2s and B3s on the ground at once, right? So that's that game, and it's pretty transferable. But when the B1 game, everyone's under blindfold and your goalkeeper is sighted, so they act as a coach,
right?
And an active participant in the game. You have your side coach, and then you've got these people who are kind of helping with the goals, so they indicate where the goals are. So they might be tapping the bar and things like that as the ball gets closer to the goal. The ball for B1 has a bell in it, so as it moves, you can hear it. There is a rule, so when the ball stops moving, if someone's got possession of it, they've got a couple seconds to keep it moving, or it's like a turnover.
Okay. So
there's little things like that. There's personal fouls, just like 5-a-side. There's no offsides. And you've got to say voy. So voy is the word of like, I'm coming in, I'm coming to challenge, I'm approaching. And if you're a person tackling, so without the ball, and you're coming in to get it, you've got to say that word within 1 metre of approach at least,
Okay.
And keep saying it, because it's an identifiable thing. It's a safety thing. So you can't just run up and just start tackling the ball without some sort of indication.
Yeah. And it's mixed. Is it mixed teams?
So what we've done, so now that you know what B1, B2, B3 sort of thing, because we've got a bit of a lack of numbers in either, we pull them all together and we do a melding pot of all. So it's more of an inclusion participation style of the game. So if we were to do it, regulation, that's the pathway to Paralympics, the pathway to World Cup. But because we're more social community and getting people involved in football, we just get everyone together and play under the compromised conditions. So as a group, we would play other teams who are willing to put the eye shades on, put the vision impairment style glasses on, and give it a crack against our team, who are a multitude of different types of vision impairment, vision loss. So it's fun. It's different, and it's not the perfect transition of what the game should look like if you're going to Paralympics, but it's it is what it is.
How important do you feel it is that you do have those pathways to the Paralympics, World Cups, and so on?
Oh, it is definitely important. We have a lot of people who have aspirations to play for their country, and do it, have their full focus on playing football for life. That's the thing. they want to train, they want to get better, they want to play with the big boys, and put themselves to the test. So it's important to have that and have those Australian pathways into international sport. So yeah, definitely. And look, my involvement with goalball, been through the Paralympic sort of qualifying system, AIS, been through international tournaments, blind sports, world championships, qualifying tournaments, been through all that. It's an amazing experience to wear the green and gold and play for your country and turn up in different places like South Korea and China and Thailand and America and play sport is unreal. So if you got a chance to do it, definitely. And playing soccer here is one step. So there's a step to go to the Australian squad and things like that via invitations. So, come and put your skills to the test, really.
Well, I was just going to get into that because there was a couple of likely lads who thought they'd put their skills to the test in terms of the Perth Soccer Club 18s, who I understand you gave a bit of a hiding to on the weekend.
Well, yeah, well, it was a good it was 2-0, so it was a good matchup. And look, those young men, I think, good character young men who gave it a good shot, and I think putting the eye shades on and blindfolds and things like that takes a lot of spirit, and so I'll take my hat off to them to giving it a try and having a go. So the way that the events sort of run is our coach Ken will run through a kind of induction about the sport. So how we communicate, who's got the ball, who needs the ball, who wants the ball, sort of thing. How we pass, how we tackle, how we obviously say void when we're tackling, and things like that. So we give a good induction into how it's played. We play a bit of kicking around and then goal kicking and things like that, and then we get into game action. And what we do find is, as I mentioned earlier, the tendency for people under blindfold is to chase the ball and get a bit in everyone's road, and unfortunately the under 18s. Straight into that mode. There was one episode where one of our players had possession, and I think 4 of their players were like kicking each other, trying to get the ball, and they was tackling each other. Didn't know who had it. It was quite a laugh.
I'm just envisioning seagulls after a chip. Yeah. That's what I'm going for there.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And Ken said after the game that it was so impressive to see what we did. But our team, we maintained our structure. We do our diamond shape structure. Your backman, your 2 wingers, your up front, your forward, and we stay in that shape to really keep space so people can move and run and carry and set up for goals. So we had fun. It was super fun. And look, we played against the 20 under 21-year-olds a couple of weeks prior to that, and we beat them 3-0. And they were just as competitive, and they had a good time too. Great men, young men. So I think, I'd love to see more inter-club matches with Perth Soccer Club teams. It would be great.
Yeah.
If you want to challenge and put your skills to the test, some of the great skills that the young players have really stepped away with is such importance of communication.
Sure.
And communication for even for sighted players, it's massive. Like it plays a big role. They might not realise it until they're in a situation where your eyes are not doing you justice. You don't know where your player is. Your head's down. You follow. You're watching who's after you, all that sort of stuff. But communication is a big key of knowing where everyone is and what the right time to pass and all that sort of stuff. So it kind of honed in on some of those skills for them.
Ben, what does the future of blind football look like for yourself, and where would you like to see the game go locally?
For me, I'd love more participation. We'd love to get more people involved with vision impairment and be able to separate our groups into their their appropriate categories of B1 and B2, B3 category of games. So if we can build up our numbers so that we can have some regular games within that skill base, that would be brilliant. And then, obviously a mini league would be cool, where, players could, play games week to week. So our sort of schedule is, hit and miss on when we're playing games. It was just like when we can find an appropriate matchup. But that's where we would love to do it, and then we could take a state team over to maybe wherever the nationals would be held. Each year they usually hold some sort of tournament where we could put our WA boys and girls to test.
Absolutely. Mate, you do get plenty of support, plenty of volunteers, but I'm sure there's always a little bit more support that you'd like.
Yeah, so a lot of players have their support workers and family members that come down supporting them in playing. So we always give them a role. So there's plenty of things to do. Obviously, identifying where the goals are is one thing. Also, like typically in a B1 soccer match, they have these side panels that line up each side of the ground, like an ice hockey rink, almost. And because we're in a bit of open space here, it's good to have those extra pair of eyes on the sideline just to tell people to stop, so we don't run into the goals that are sitting on the side or things like that. So, and the odd stray ball that disappears or goes over the roof or those sorts of things. So yeah, that's always handy, and especially when we take the game on the road. So we do play down in Australind sometimes. We're trying to build our participation in blind soccer down in Australind, Bunbury region. So having a few extra hands and players and people who are willing to put a blindfold on is always handy to get game action going. Because not every area has numbers flowing in like your mainstream sports, so we have to manicure that a bit.
Of course, and the support from Football West and the Football Futures Foundation. Yeah, look, Mick and crew, they've been pretty handy early on in the piece. I think in the future I'd like to really hone in on how we schedule matches and things like that. So there's a lot of cross all abilities and different groups that play the game and want to have a crack at our style of game too. So like even walking soccer is a group that'd be keen to kind of have a crack. And last year we played against there was a women's team. I can't remember where they're from. They challenged us over in Coburn City. That was cool. And we had a game at I think it was was it Hawthorn? I can't remember. Mount Lawley, sorry. And that was against the All Abilities crew. And that was fun. So more of those little pop-up events would be cool. So yeah, we'll work together with Football Futures to do more of them possibly next season. And if people are listening to this, they want to get involved in whatever capacity, Ben, how can they go about it? Yeah, look, the easiest way is to jump on to our website at blindsportswa.com.au and register your interest through there. There's the Contact Us page. There's got all the different sports that are available, including our blind soccer our group. And we've got our schedule up there so you can see what games are coming up and where they are. So we do play at Loftus as well, coming up on the 1st of September. At the outdoor court there. We've got this Sunday at the 11th from 8:30 a.m. and I think Australind on the 18th. So there's a few games coming up, and I think we finish on the 8th our season, and then we've got our wind up on the 14th, which is not just a club one; it's a full blind sports awards night called our Bling Ball, which all sports get recognised for what they're doing. Yeah, beautiful stuff. Ben, it's an inspirational story. It's very admirable, what you guys are doing in terms of just creating those opportunities, mate, and certainly appreciate your time on the podcast. Thanks for having me. Cheers. Welcome back to the Perth SC Podcast. Big thank you to Ben Rowe, who joined us from the Perth SC Blind Football team. Fascinating chat, wasn't it? Just to learn a little bit more about blind football. But, geez, I tell you what, it puts things well and truly into perspective when you do have a conversation like that. Right, let's have a bit of a look at what's happening across, the NPL, but I guess a little bit more of a broader chat about what's happening in football in Western Australia. Now, one guy who's been following the game for a long time, working in the game, calling plenty of games is Football West commentator and part of the team down there at the Perth Football Podcast, who do a magnificent job covering the game each week and really trying to raise the profile of football here in Western Australia. Tommy Doleman's with us. Tommy, g'day, mate.
Hello, Blaine. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, mate. It's been a bit of an up and down season for the Azzurri. So let's start there, mate. How are you seeing them so far this season, particularly the NPL men's team? Let's start off there.
So I suppose on the men's side, it's fair to say that it's been a bit of a turbulent one. And I guess, obviously, there were some changes in the early to mid part of the season, which have obviously contributed to that in a way. And Kenny Lowe, a very experienced coach at this level, has obviously come in and had to essentially do another pre-season again, wanting to implement his style of play and style of football. And these things take time, and as a result, Perth have maybe not quite gotten that consistency together over the course of a season that they would have ideally have liked. But I still think that the team itself has got plenty of talent in it, a lot of good young players as well, with some real scope for growth and improvements, not just in the back end of this season, but also going forward as well. So I think it is exciting times for Perth on a broader point, but obviously you can't necessarily trade in anything for time, and everything that comes good in life does take a little bit of time. But if you're looking at it from the immediacy of this season, I personally think they're going to be okay. I was always very confident they did have the talent to be away from the bottom of the league. They're probably going to take a little bit more time to get out of that mix than I thought they would in the middle part of the season, but I still just think they've got too much talent to really be dragged into anything that's going to be perilous.
Yeah, just having a bit of a look at what the table does look like at the moment. They currently sit 4 points ahead of Perth Glory in the 11th spot, which of course is the spot that'll have to go through the dreaded kind of promotion relegation playoff, and they are currently 7 points ahead of Inglewood, who is in the automatic relegation position. Tommy, it's unfamiliar territory, it must be said, for the Azzurri.
From when I've been covering Perth on a broader point, they've always been competing at the top for trophies. They've always been in the top four mix. Obviously a well-storied, well-decorated club here in WA football. So it is a little bit strange to see them in those lowest areas of the league table as such. But I guess these things are cyclical, aren't they? You're always going to get teams that are competing at the top of the table, and then there is going to be that period for these bigger teams, not just locally in this sort of football that we're talking about, Blaine, but in global football, you're always going to have bigger teams, I suppose, in terms of their size, having to go through periods of transition and periods of rebuild, and Perth are clearly in that stage at the moment. It could be argued perhaps that they have been for a year or two now as they're looking to try and find their journey onto the next stage. But, you know, with the power that the club has, I'm fairly sure that at some point they're going to get things right. And you never know, this might be a very valuable year, because what you are starting to see is the likes of Gordon Perkins now really starting to come into his own, I'm feeling. He's always been a player with a lot of talent, but I think there's been a lot of maturity in his performances this season that I've really liked. There's been a really good opportunity for some of the young guys like Kobe Sutton on the left-hand side of the pitch to come through and play some senior minutes. David Ninkovic, I've always liked him. I feel like he's a real maverick in the middle of the park, and you're combining his talent along with people like Sam Cook, Ethan Banks, Perkins, as I mentioned before, and you are starting to really see that chemistry come together in the final third of the pitch. Now, it's about putting it together for 90 minutes over the course of a game, and we've maybe not seen that on as many occasions from Perth as I suppose the Azzurri fans would like, but broadly speaking, I still think they've got plenty of talent in their team, and with some smart additions going forward, I think they can most certainly get back into the positions that they'd want to be in terms of competing.
Tommy, you did mention a little bit of the history there, and historically Perth has been, you know, one of the bigger hitters of the league. And mate, you must have called some fantastic games, whether it be at Dorrien Gardens, but well and truly involving the Perth Soccer Club over the years.
Yeah, I have. I've been very fortunate to call for Football West for a number of years now. I never take it for granted. I got the opportunity about 6 years ago, 7 years ago to do it, and here I am. I'm still here, and I'm just, I suppose, grateful that people aren't fed up of me yet. But I suppose if you're asking me from a Perth perspective, invariably, because they've been competing at the top of the league for the most part whenever I've been calling, they have often featured in cup finals, top four finals, pre-season finals, battles for league titles and key games in terms of the duration of the season. And obviously there's plenty of memorable finals as well, which I think you want to get onto shortly, Blaine. But yeah, it's most certainly, in terms of commentary memories for me, there's plenty of games that I look back now on fondly, even now. And I was having a little bit of a think before we were scheduled to do this podcast today. And even now, I still remark at some of the games that I look back on them and think, oh, geez. It almost makes you wonder whether you're ever going to get a game like that ever again in some cases.
The one that stands out for me, and our listeners will know that are regularly tune in, is your voice, your dulcet tones on the front end of our intro there. And of course, that was a memorable moment, particularly for our Azuri women's team.
Absolutely. So I'm assuming that clip refers to the night series final in season 2023. So that was last year. So I guess Perth have been a relative newcomer on the NPL women's side. Well, the NPL women's competition has only been up since the 2020 season, but since arriving into the league, Perth have really made a bit of a stamp on it. They have been very competitive at the top of the league for a number of seasons now, particularly the last two campaigns where, you know, they've assembled some really good sides on paper and some really talented footballers. I mean, you're looking in the team this season, and the team that they've got on the pitch this season, Ella Lincoln, is really taken a step this year. You're looking at the likes of Grace Johnston and Georgia Cassidy, players who have recently been a part of the Perth Glory setup, and some youngsters as well, like Jess Flannery, who unfortunately injured at the moment, but she's really had a breakthrough year as well. So you're looking at Perth and you're seeing that they have been very competitive coming into the NPLWA women's competition, and I think that's terrific to see that clubs such as Perth have got that ambition on the women's side to invest in their female programs and look to really kick things into gear. Now, if it weren't for these magnificent Red Star sides over the past 2 or 3 seasons, then potentially I think Perth may be having a little bit more women's silverware in their trophy cabinet potentially. But make no mistake, even on the basis of what we've seen in season 2024, across the 3 matches, the 3 league games anyway, that we've seen them play against the 2-time defending champions, I think they are certainly going to be in with a shout and fancying their chances in a one-off game in a state cup final or in a top 4 final potentially later in the season.
Yeah, that's what we're very much looking forward to here at Perth. And unfortunate result on the weekend. Of course, the Azuri girls going down to Balcatta, which may have just put a little bit of a bigger dent in the season title. But opportunities for silverware still to come, top 4 cup. And of course, that state cup, that's going to be a tasty one at the Sam Kerr Football Centre as well.
Yes, and the second time they've played each other at the in the State Cup final over the past 2 seasons. They did it in 2022 as well, when Jay Coleman's goal got the victory for Red Star fairly late on in that game. I believe Perth did take the lead in that match. So, look, it's anything can happen in a one-off game, Blaine, and Red Star are a very good side. There's no doubt about that. They're going to be a tough team to knock off. But I think if you're looking at it from the objectivity of a one-off game, do Perth have players that can pose Red Star problems? Absolutely they do. And by the same token, are Red Star the same invincible team that they were last season or even the season before when they went through the whole campaign undefeated and had a clean sweep of the silverware? They're still a very good side, but they're not that team. So I suppose if you're looking at it through a Perth lens, there's absolutely a chance that there is still some silverware to be gotten at this season, without a doubt.
Tom, just to go back down memory lane a little bit, some of the players that you would have seen wearing the famous Azuri shirt, who are the standouts to you?
Oh, geez. There's quite a lot. So I think the best team, or the most fond Perth team that I remember, is the 2019 team. And this was probably at the time when Perth, for me, were at their strongest. They had a very good side in 2016 as well when they won the grand final against Inglewood. I think it was known as the grand final that year. But in 2019, they had the final against Inglewood as well at Inglewood Stadium, where Alex Siller bobbed up for a late goal in a top four final. And that was just a very strong side. You were looking at players sort of at the back end like Nicolo Sabatini, who were really good footballers and who were contributing for a fairly decent period of time there at Perth. Jordan DeLeo was very much a young player, but very much a player who was really coming through with a rush. Kristen Santich, we know that he's been over east since. Alex Siller, we mentioned before as well. Unfortunately, some injuries curtailed his progress in the middle part of last season. But also then you've got Kieran Colwell and Michael Domfey, who was such a big contributor to Perth in that team as well. And also Bojan Radinovic as well, who I think was at one stage one of the best defenders in the entire league. So for me, that 2019 team was an incredibly strong one. And it actually reflects well for me, I guess individually as a memory as well from a Perth perspective, because I remember going to Melbourne for a wedding in 2019, and the wedding was on a Saturday, and then I was having a look through the fixture list, and I saw that Perth Soccer Club were playing Heidelberg United away in the old NPL finals, which it's a little bit of a bugbear of mine that competition is not still running. I think it was originally canned because of COVID, and unfortunately that's not been brought back. And for those listeners who might not be aware what the competition was, it was where they essentially got all of the 8 champions from the member feds and they drew them out together in a knockout tournament, and you would have a champion of champions, essentially, which I think is a fantastic way to essentially give you a guide on where our teams are at, and the opportunities to play some of the top teams from around the country on a more regular basis. I think that's something that we can be really craving out for in Perth a little more often, particularly given our run in the Australia Cup in recent times, which we may also come on to. But back onto that match, that Heidelberg versus Perth game was absolutely spectacular because it had just about everything in it. I remember Paul Zimmerino gave the Azzurri a really early lead in the game, and Heidelberg came back with a real rush. They missed a penalty, and then they drew it back level pretty late on in the piece, about 15 or 20 minutes remaining. But Perth really just were playing with such a belief that they picked up from that season that they did have, and you had the likes of Francis Sawali in goal as well before he went over to Dandenong City Thunder, and also Alex Jovic, who went on to get that second goal. He's a bit of a name from the past as well, and it all sort of culminated in Michael Domfey scoring a very late winner in extra time to make it 3-2, and I remember being stood there sort of pitch side with Gary Marocchi, and Domfey obviously ran over to all the Perth fans. So that was a match that was a real memory, I suppose, back in that sort of, I guess in that era of Perth, sort of around that 2019-2021 period where they were really strong.
I was just going to kind of morph that into a little bit of an Australia Cup type chat, because there's a little bit of concern about where the standard of the NPLWA competition is, because we do like to compare, whether it's rightly or wrongly, we do like to compare to what's happening over east. And I think plenty of not only Green Machine fans for Olympic Kingsway were happy there last night, but I think there was a bit of a collective sigh across WA football because there's only been one other team that had made it through to that round of 16, and that was Sorrento back in 2017. So still a little bit of a question mark on where we're at in comparison to some of those other competitions, Tommy?
Well, yes and no. I think it's fair to say that WA is lagging behind the Victorian and the New South Wales competitions in particular, and a lot of that is due just down to funding and investment and money, and sometimes there is nothing you can do about that. But I suppose to take a glass half full approach, or a more sort of nuanced take on it, this is just my individual perspective as well, but I feel like in the Australia Cup over the past, 4 or 5 years, we've not necessarily had our strongest league teams competing in that competition. And that's fair enough because it's the nature of the cup, and anybody can get there and win it or get to the final and completely deserve to be at that point. There's absolutely no problems about that whatsoever. But I'm just looking at it from a context perspective, and you had Floreat and Inglewood competing and representing WA last season, and both of them were fighting relegation in the 2023 season. The year before that, we had Coburn and Armidale, who have traditionally not been teams competing at the top end of the NPLWA men's competition or the top flights. In 2021, we had ECU make it, and unfortunately, there was obviously some pretty horrible circumstances in the aftermath of obviously the incident with Danny Hodgson, and then ECU. It was clearly a bit of a tricky situation for them after that happened. So there are mitigating factors where I think that from a WA perspective, our best teams or our best, strongest sides haven't necessarily been representing the state in those matches. But I must admit, when Red Star went down to Lions last weekend in the pouring rain at Perth Reserve, I was a little concerned and a little bit worried, but I think Kingsway have alleviated a little bit of that stress, obviously with their victory last night as we're speaking now, but obviously that's not to say that it's an excuse or anything like that. I just think that there are some mitigating circumstances, and I'm not quite as down as what a lot of other people are, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think you're probably right. I think we probably save face a little bit collectively as Western Australian football with that result for Olympic Kingsway. But very disappointing with Red Star. If that is the reflection of West Australian football overall, and I'm not saying it is, but it could be seen that way by some in relative circles. Tommy, we won't chew your ear off too much, mate, but just looking ahead to this weekend, particularly for the Azzurri, I said a little bit earlier on, I think this is a chance to maybe get a bit of a win on the road for the Azzurri. I think the break might have done them some good, and hopefully nice and fresh against Bayswater, which will certainly be a tremendous clash come Saturday afternoon.
Well, it's a big derby game, isn't it, historically? There's a big rivalry that goes back a long way between Perth and Bayswater, so those matches are always very intriguing, and unfortunately I'm not on that one at the weekend, but I will be getting back to catch that one later, because I think there's going to be a little bit of chaos which unfolds at that match. I certainly don't think it's going to be a 0-0 game, even though I've probably just jinxed it now by saying that on your podcast, Blaine, but I just think with the way that Bayswater play, they're so open, and yes, they do have some amazing individuals who need to be watched and who need to be well marshalled. But I think with the way that Perth like to play in terms of knocking the ball around and putting passes together and shifting opposition out of position before then suddenly, I guess, really springing in with a killer pass and stretching the defence. I certainly think there's some avenues there for Perth to exploit, and Bayswater certainly haven't been one of the best defensive teams in the league over the years either. So I think if you're looking at it from a Perth perspective, there's definitely some avenues and opportunities at which they can get at Bayswater. They're just going to have to be very wary of the likes of Jackson and Asmo, Cameron Teese. These guys are fantastic footballers and are real match winners on their day. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And I'm guessing from a broader standpoint as well, Blaine, you're looking at it from a Perth perspective in the standings as well. Historically, and I know that last season was definitely an anomaly, but historically, if you're looking at that 20-point mark, I think 95% of the time you're going to be okay. So I think from if you're looking at it from an Azzurri standpoint, I think one more win and a couple more wins definitely, maybe a win and a draw, and I think Perth will be there, particularly with the Glory's next couple of games and Inglewood's next couple of games as well. Inglewood will obviously play Kingsway this weekend. Red Star are playing the Glory. So I guess it's an opportunity for Perth to sort of maybe steal a march and maybe claw that little bit closer to safety.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's all playing out on Saturday afternoon. Tommy, thanks very much for your time, mate. Always a pleasure to have a chat.
No, thank you, Blaine. Cheers.
Big thanks to Ben Rowe, and just there was Tommy Doleman, of course, and great to have a chat with those two gentlemen. Right, let's look ahead to the weekend. Our NPL men, they're away this weekend as the NPL men's competition resumes following the break there for the Australia Cup. Away to Bayswater this week. Big chance for a win on the road, I feel. Hopefully the boys are nice and refreshed after a week off and, raring to go. Could be a big chance for a win on the road. Bayswater currently sitting in 6th on the table, but they've had a little bit of up and down form, having lost 3 out of their last 5 fixtures. 18s and 20s, all involved on the Saturday. Kickoff for the senior men at 3 p.m. at Frank Drago Reserve. For our NPL women, they'll travel out to UWA Sports Park to take on the bottom place at UWA Netherlands. But despite where they sit on the table, UWA, they've been quite competitive in recent weeks. Gave Red Star maybe a little bit of a scare last week as they scored very, very early. Kickoff for our senior women on the Sunday is at 1 p.m. at UWA Sports Park. Good luck to all the sides in action this weekend. Make sure you get out and support a Missouri Army. And come on, the Missouri.